Hello, everybody. My name is Krista Fee. Welcome back to Rise Up Voices from the Frontlines. Today's episode is one that might stir something deep, and that's exactly why it matters. It's called When Help Feels Like Harm, and we're diving into the complex, often painful disconnect between first responders and the communities they're meant to serve. We'll talk about trauma, mistrust, and how real safety is built, not just enforced. We'll talk about how we begin to see each other as human again. The historical gap. Let's start with this hard truth. For some communities, especially those who've experienced high levels of systemic stress or generational adversity, the sight of a uniform doesn't always signal safety. It may trigger fear. Some populations feel over-policed or historically misunderstood, and when help comes from someone who looks like a figure of previous harm, even well-intentioned assistance can feel threatening. This isn't about villainizing responders. It's about understanding that trauma lives in patterns, not just moments. Repeated perceptions of feeling silenced, ignored, profiled, or dismissed create a nervous system imprint of danger. And over time, that becomes the lens through which future interactions are filtered. What trauma does to perception. From a neuroscience standpoint, trauma disrupts neuroception, the body's ability to assess safety. It's important to note that trauma imprints whether physical danger is present or whether it's believed that danger exists. When someone's experienced repeated harm or institutional betrayal, their amygdala stays hyper alert. Their prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought, goes offline. Everything feels like a threat. This isn't paranoia, it's biology. And responders often walk into these moments expecting trust and instead are met with anger, aggression, or fear. Thus, a growing culture of violence in our communities where officers are being shot in their vehicles and even medical and fire response personnel are not immune. What's needed is co-regulation, not command, presence, not performance, and relationship, not just response. Repairing trust. 5 invitations. If you're a responder or someone working in systems meant to serve, here are 5 trauma-informed ways to begin rebuilding trust, along with what they look like in action. And we will take this from a community standpoint as well in another episode. So this is not a one-sided podcast. 1, show up outside the crisis because relationships don't start with sirens. Attend community events, volunteer at a local school, host a Q&A at a community center. Here's an example. A fire captain in Chicago regularly volunteers at a youth art program. At first, the teens were standoffish, but 6 months in, he's Coach Chris. They open up, ask questions about safety, and tell their stories. That slow presence is dismantling fear. Why it matters. Repeated positive exposure reduces cortisol levels and builds predictable safety cues in the nervous system. Number 2, acknowledge the harm even if you didn't cause it. Name it. I know this uniform hasn't always meant safety. I'm not here to pretend that didn't happen. I'm here to do better. Example, a police lieutenant opened a town hall by sharing his own story of being racially profiled as a teen. That vulnerability changed the tone of the entire room. Science says acknowledgement activates the anterior cingulate cortex, helping regulate pain and emotional processing. It says you're not crazy, that did happen. 3, regulate yourself before you respond. Do your own nervous system check before engaging. Breathe and notice if your tone is rising. Example, a responder paused before approaching a tense scene. Instead of barking commands, he lowered his voice, stepped back physically, and said, I want to talk, not escalate. That shift calmed the group. Co-regulation downshifts hypervigilance and allows the prefrontal cortex to come back online for both parties. 4, ask before you act. Offer choices. Would you feel safer if I stood further back? Would it help if I explained what I'm doing next? An example, a paramedic asked a frightened teen, "Can I put my hand on your shoulder?" The teen nodded slowly. That one question preserves agency and reduces shutdown. Research shows that autonomy strengthens ventral vagal tone, a biological marker of safety and connection. 5, create a shared language. Let the community co-create the language and the plans around safety. So you're not dictating, you're collaborating. An example, in a rural town, responders partner with faith leaders and youth advocates to design evacuation flyers. The tone was community first, not command heavy. People actually read them and used them. Why it matters. When people have a voice in their own safety, they are more likely to trust, remember, and engage. These practices don't require perfection, they require presence, and over time, they become the foundation of trust. How crisis pods are used as bridge builders. RISEUP Phoenix Trauma and Crisis Institute is doing a fundraiser for crisis pods, and they're more than supply units, they're relationship tools. Each pod includes nutritional, medical, and critical needs supplies, emotional first aid kits, trauma-informed resources for both responders and the public, and community outreach kits for pre-crisis education and planning. We bring resources before disaster strikes because trust starts long before the 911 call. Support the mission. We're currently raising $50,000 to equip our next crisis pods in Texas and Chicago. If this work resonates with you, I invite you to join us. Help us build real safety, not just presence, but partnership. Donate today at battle2be.org, BATTLE2be.org. Share this episode. Share your takeaways at hashtag RiseUpVoices, hashtag community safety, hashtag trauma-informed care, hashtag trust repair, or hashtag RiseUpPhoenix. Thank you so much for being here with us today.